All right, grab your favorite mug. It's time for Coffee with Your Retirement Coach.
Welcome back to Coffee with Your Retirement Coach. Behind the clipboard today, we have Mr. Randy Yeomans. Welcome, Randy.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Hi, Nick.
So, hi. We are missing somebody again today.
We are.
Okay, so Aaron, if you're tuning in, you probably are.
Is that his name, Aaron? Is that his?
Have you already forgotten?
I forgot who he was.
Man, he's one of the hardest people in the world to forget. To know Aaron is to love Aaron.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to do a little different episode. One of the things we thought would be really interesting for our audience, Randy, you've got 41 years in this industry. And what I'd like to do is pull back the curtain.
Okay.
If we were to look behind the scenes where, the industry was in our firm and that evolution of where we are today and having so much personal tie-in with some great leading leaders within financial services today.
Right.
Where do we see the next 10 to 20 years of financial planning in our industry?
Okay.
So with that said, why don't we start with your personal journey? Mean, we're not talking about a boy in a dream, okay? but how did this plane start for you? Like, what got you into the industry?
It's interesting. I think like a lot of young people, when I was starting out, really didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I think I've heard the statistics. I don't know how accurate this is, but something like 70% of the people who are in the workforce don't work in the field in which they were educated. So, they go to college for whatever, but they end up 70% of them in a different field. So I think that's kind of my same story. I started out, believe it or not, as an art major at Georgia State University. And after college, I had a brother-in-law that worked at the fire department. And back in that day, he worked 24 hours and he was off 48. So I thought to myself, man, if I could do that, then I could find another job. And almost every firefighter at the time, they worked another job. So, starting another business, et cetera. And then I had somebody in the financial service industry call on me and started explaining some financial planning concepts to me.
And when you say call on you, he was calling you to sell you some kind of services or products.
Back in that day, which is in the early 80s, 90% of the people in the financial service industry were peddling products. Everything that you needed for financial planning was a product. But he opened my eyes to some interesting things, and one of them, being in my 20s, was what would retirement look like? Well, when you're 20, you don't think about that at all. But the other thing was, how certain products and solutions worked in the financial service industry. And it was so different than anything I heard. I realized, I started, like so many people of my age group, I had a job as a kid and always had my own spending money and bought my own stuff. And that was, today that's a little unusual, but back when I was coming up, that was not all that unusual. So I already had a hard wired towards a work ethic. And if I was going to work a second job, this was really fascinating. And it was not in line with my education, but the creative element of financial planning really appealed to me. And so I ended up being recruited by a professional athlete into an industry.
And Randy, we've got to pause because we're skipping over one of the most beautiful things. This first gentleman who called on you to sell you a product and service, what did you ask him?
Yeah. So that's a kind of a good story. So he's talking to me about what he's doing and how he does it. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you guys hiring?" And he didn't know what to say, but actually the company was recruiting people. And so I actually joined on a part-time basis and got started. He took me to his mentor. We're happy to be a professional athlete. That guy had a lot of recognition and acknowledgments, and for his own family's privacy, I'll keep his name out of it. But he was impressive. And for some reason, he took a liking to me. And he had one of the first computers I'd ever seen. And it was, it was like a small refrigerator that you'd have in your dorm. And the floppy disks were really floppy disks. I think they were 8 or 10-inch floppy disks. And he paid like $25,000 for this thing. So that was kind of cool. And I did that for a while while still working in the fire department. And then after about 2 or 3 years, I was doing a lot better with my part-time career than I was my full-time career, and it was much more in line with my enthusiasm and likings and that. And so I left the job security world and all that and went to work full-time for that company. And in that, I was kind of stuck in the products and services and offering that they had, but I was an early adopter to retirement accounts because IRAs at the time were nobody had an IRA to speak of. And I saw how powerful it was back when a lot of people were in a 28+% tax bracket. If they put away $2,000, which was a limit, how much that would save them. And I remember explaining to him, the government's making a third of this contribution for you if you do it this way. And all kinds of things came out of that, including the ability to use things like a business analyst to calculator, and some of the HP calculators to help really show clients how to build a financial plan on paper because nobody had a computer.
But Randy, like I love kind of the direction of where we're going in terms of financial planning and how that evolution evolved. But let's go personal for a second because, most people in our industry, we have what a lot of people I think don't understand is our industry is a tough industry. Yeah. It's an expensive industry. Yeah. There are a lot of different barriers of entry to get into our industry, right? And most of the people, like when you start, you grind. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it's a grind. Talk to us about that early grind, because a lot of people know you today as the successful, you're the founder of our firm. You and I are partners, but you're the founder, right? You walked a journey I didn't walk. Talk to us about that early grind.
Well, I mean, it was difficult because, there was no real good marketing thing. And the firms that did a lot of marketing and that at the time were insurance companies and that, and, they put out the ads and the advertisement. My business was largely word of mouth, referrals, introductions. And a lot of times back in that day, the clientele that I served, hardworking Americans, a lot of times they couldn't take time off during the day. So had to do a lot of weekend work, had to do a lot of evening work, and people, didn't respect appointments. And, it was a grind. The attrition level in the industry at that time had to be 95%. I mean, almost nobody made it. And, but I do think I had, without sounding maybe egotistical, I had a unique gifting towards it, very much a desire to learn, a liking, a passion for it, because I realized even early on that people knew nothing about financial planning. Like they had no clue, didn't know what a financial planner did, didn't know what financial planning was, had no idea of how much they needed to accumulate. I grew up in that age where you're supposed to get, stay out of trouble, get a good education, get a good job, work for that company for the rest of your life, and you'd be set. And in that period of time, of course, defined benefits started going away, pensions, et cetera.
Started going away,
and that was a creation of things like the 401k, the introduction of, paying your own retirement into it. But nobody had any education about that. They didn't understand budget. They didn't understand. I started
people in our industry didn't understand a lot of those things.
Well, I'm going to tell you, and it's sad, but a lot of them still don't, because there are a lot of financial planners who are broke. There are a lot of people, and I'm not being derogatory. I'm just saying the people who get in this industry aren't always good personally on the personal side. And so I'm a big believer in eating your own cooking, scratching your own itch, doing things right. I want to have authentic integrity in what I'm recommending people do, because I want to do it myself. And a lot of what we developed over the years was, as I've accumulated my own business and wealth, what do I need to do to be successful, to protect me, protect my family, to have the success later in life that I want? Well, those same tools and techniques are what we use with our clients.
Randy, I think back to the early days in the grind. Being in a family business, I love working with family businesses. I think because I grew up in a family business, okay? And for our audience today, you might recognize our last names are the same. And as much as Randy loves it when people confuse us as brothers, Randy is dad. In the professional setting, it's Randy, but everywhere else in the world, it's dad.
Actually, sometimes it's yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, that's true. Yes, sir. But, I have, I think a lot of my value system today in appreciation for what we have today. I remember, after school writing, our marketing program back then, I would staple flyers on mailboxes.
Hey, that's illegal.
Allegedly. How about that? Allegedly. I remember that, though. I remember the community center talks that were given. I remember so many of these things in the early days of you kind of getting this grind. But, I've got another memory that stayed with me. And I think, largely the reason I have a hard time not working 24/7 in my mind related to our business is because I do have a period of time where my memories of you were, basically you kissing me on the forehead, while I'm still in bed in the morning. Yeah. And then you kissing me on the forehead and I'm in bed, going to bed at night. Like that was the memories. Absolutely. Because you were in the grind and you did the hard things. Yep. And I didn't have to step into a lot of that because you already did it. Right. And, I think for a lot of people who have family businesses, that next generation, I think a lot of them really do appreciate it, but they didn't live it.
Right. So again, the idea, and I've had colleagues and friends who brought family members into businesses and they want that family member to go through that same grind that they did so they'd have their appreciation. And you went through it. I mean, I think there was a couple of times where I shared with you the concept of nepotism. And for us to have a successful business, you had to be the lowest man on the totem pole and you had to earn your way up. And that wasn't just talk. I mean, you really had to do that. And I told you I would pay you what you were worth, and you weren't worth much. And so
that's real talk.
So, but you developed, you actually took on the challenge. You started developing your own segment within our business. And then you and I teamed up and I said, rather than do that, why don't you help me at the top end of the business instead of the bottom end of the business, like so many people want, family members and people starting out. So I think what's been good about the dynamics of our firm is we're both lifetime learners. We both like to go to conference. We both like getting coached. We like spending the money and the energy and the time. And I say nobody wants to waste money, but the value that we get at the end by seeking good counsel and seeking guidance. And my experience has been, whether it's the attrition rate in our industry or any industry, is that most people just really aren't passionate about what they do. They like what they do maybe, or they make a good living at what they do, but they don't, eat it, drink it, sleep on it, all that kind of stuff. And the impact that we get to have in an industry that is extremely entrepreneur, meaning almost no offices in the independent space was the area in which we work for. The way I would explain it in the early days was we buy our own potted plant and pay our own rent. We don't have a big company who is making us sell products and services with the blue or the red label. We get to work in a fiduciary relationship with clients. We are the company, the things that we do. But in that, if you're going to grow and you're going to have the kind of success, the same thing we would tell our entrepreneur clients is you've got to invest in that business. And one of the things I tell people is the best investment that you can make is in your education and in your coaching and your guidance, getting that business person to team up with people who've been ahead of them. And I had a great chance of doing that early in my career when I changed companies and found a really exceptional financial planning firm.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's two, I call them Randyisms, okay, that come to my mind. And one of them is beware the coach that doesn't have a coach.
Right.
We call ourselves your retirement coach. This is Coffee with Your Retirement Coach. And my gosh, since I've been in the industry, I can't even tell you how many coaches we've had.
Right.
Some of them are for different periods of time in our practice to help us evolve. Some of them are to help us work out certain, things we're trying to figure out within the firm. But we've really bought into coaching. Yeah. But the second part to that, which we've tried to communicate to our clients, an educated client is our best client. We want to educate our clients. But, this takes me back to the second Randyism, which is the book you don't read can't help you.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
So that was Jim Rohn. That's where that quote
is that
came from.
you know? I
So
don't
by the
think
way,
remember
I
that.
borrow brilliance anywhere I can. So he was very impactful early in my career because he was such a business philosopher, and some of the things that he said really resonated with me. You know, a lot of them were about character and about leadership, and so it was very impactful. I remember one he said,
Great communicator.
Oh, it's such a great communicator. And it's kind of funny about that whole idea, the direction I was going with this is, if you want to be successful, the great news is all you have to do is really pay the price, because most people will quit. And that's true of athletics. It's true in business. So if you've got that grind in you, if you're a business owner and you're willing to pay the price, and the hope I have is that you don't take shortcuts. You don't do the unethical stuff. Sadly, in our industry, some people, they take shortcuts, and it leads to the industry having a bad reputation sometimes because of how the industry has sometimes remunerated people to do the wrong thing. And again, I'm not picking on any industry, but if some people are just forced by the nature of quotas that they have to meet and things to offer and promote and push products and services that people don't need, don't want, and shouldn't own. But if you will pay a little bit more of an extra price and become extremely knowledgeable and devoted to your craft, whatever that industry might be, then you'll get rewarded. And in other words, people will seek you out. They will find you. People will refer you to. One of the early goals I had is I wanted our clients treated so well that they felt compelled to bring other people into the business. Like they wanted their friends and family to be part of the Yeomans company because of how we took care of them. And a lot of that, if you don't mind me just rambling here for a minute, has to do with the team we've built. And you said something a minute ago about the grind and all that. So and this is true of all entrepreneur businesses, financial services being a great example of that, but in all industries is you hit this ceiling where all the infrastructure, the people, whether it's you and somebody or you by yourself or you and 5 people, once you grow to a certain level, that structure that you had that got you to that level will no longer take you to the next level. So you have to continue to bring on and invest in new people. And so one of the things I feel looking at the gratitude that I've got for our industry and for the business is the people that we've been able to attract and bring into the business. I feel like we have the most unbelievable team of professionals in the office today that we've ever had.
We have an all-star team for sure.
From a character standpoint, for caring for one another and caring for the client. Because if you, like you said, if you take care of clients, they take care of you. So I think we've got a great team, and that happened because we hit roadblocks. And by the way, this is the horrible thing about being an entrepreneur. When you hit some roadblocks and some ceilings of complexity, some things for you to grow and continue to offer better services than that, the people that brought you there, sometimes they're not the right people. So some people don't fit that future. They don't want to change. They don't want to grow. They don't want to improve. They don't want to take a different career path. But I think that the group that we have right now is not that group. But over the years, that has meant that some of the people that we brought in the early days, they weren't in a growth mind. You know, they weren't in a period where they weren't servant leaders all the time. We've had great people. I don't want you to think differently of that, but a lot of them didn't fit where we are right now and where we're going.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, Randy, you kind of, I'm gonna take us back just a couple minutes because you were really talking. We have such an incredible. As much as the young generation's picked on,
yes,
and they are by far. My voice sounds like this because I'm coaching wrestling again. Okay, and it's such a wonderful opportunity to pour into these young men, right? And I get to serve our youth at church, and we've got some. I want to encourage our audience. We have some unbelievable young people coming up in this generation. They are going to be world changers. They are going to do some amazing things. They might not think exactly like us or do things exactly the same way, but let me tell you, character, heart, their willingness to serve a community, amazing young people coming up. That being said, Randy, there's a lot of people who want to start and I've heard you say this before, they want to start even.
Right.
Right. So they want to come into our industry, and maybe they, kind of see the kind of practice we have or the amazing team we have. And they think it just kind of happens sometimes.
Right.
And so what I love, not just for our industry, but young entrepreneurs, wanting to start a business, wanting to get an industry. What's one or two things you could tell them, looking back at the life lessons you've had, if you were to do it over again, starting from scratch, what are one or two takeaways you could give them as they enter in starting their business or their firm?
So a couple of parts. You may have to put me back on track with this, but I think, first of all, thanks for sharing that. I do think that a lot of young people are getting a bad rap today. And that's like many people in many industries, it's just certain people who make that, image come across in that. And we all like to find fault. So, and I'm guilty of doing that at times. So thanks for the encouragement about young folks. I agree with that, especially my grandchildren. But I think that making the that transition into what somebody needs to do. First of all, two things come to mind when you said that right off the cuff. One is quit comparing yourself to others.
Oh man.
I mean, I think one of the things that is so discouraging is when you find, and when I was coaching wrestling too, and talking to parents who were awesome, what I would try to tell them is you got to realize that these young folks that are coming up, the tendency is for all of us is to compare ourselves. And so what they would do, I would say they create a superhuman. And what they do is they take the best looking person they know, the strongest, the best athletic, the best student, the one with the best relationships, the most friends, and they kind of take a little bit of each of those and they create this superhuman because they're always comparing themselves against the best of 4 or 5 people, and they don't measure up. Nobody measures up to that. So don't compare yourself. And if you did, and this is whether you're my age or a young person coming out, be better next year. That's really your goal, is to improve. And throughout my entire career, there are always people who I was in awe of. Like, I can't believe they've had this level of success, but I don't know their backstory. I don't know how they got there. And as I've matured and learned is sometimes there's some things that went on that gave people maybe a different advantage or a different path to success than maybe I had or somebody else had. So I want to get better every year. I want the firm to get better. I want to serve better. I want to grow. So with that in mind, don't compare yourself. But the second thing, which is biblical, I think, is to be content in whatever state you find yourself. Not content to the place where you're sitting back on your haunches and that, but recognize that you're making reasonable progress. And if you're the person who has a fire in their belly, whether this is athletics or education or workforce, I think the entrepreneur world is for you. If you've got a fire, the way you can create and grow your wealth today is that company that you're going to go to work for won't exist when you retire. Okay, so I tell young people to think about becoming you incorporated, that you are a business, and if you go to work for ABC down the street, you're leasing yourself to that employer right now.
I love that mindset.
They can terminate that lease anytime. So you've got to build your own wealth and your own plan and your own structure for you and your family based on that you are an independent contractor, even though you're employed by somebody. And that doesn't mean you'll ever change firms. Hopefully that firm will last forever and they're of a growth mindset like we have at Yeomans. But if they don't, or if they do, you want to build personal wealth by doing things right. And I have kind of a rule where if a young person was asking me, what would you do? Well, one of them is living below your means, but to put more structure around that is if you are putting 10% of what your wages are, your income, your whatever industry you might be, if you put 10% of that away as an opportunities fund, like, so if something comes up, you could dip into it to take a chance, take a risk, etc., and 10% in long-term savings strategy, so that no matter what worst case scenario, if you start saving in your early 20s, 10% of your income, when you retire, you're going to be very well off unless you do some really dumb stuff. So don't do dumb stuff. And then the other 10% is giving, like being charitable Coachable, sowing seeds of prosperity. And I believe there's a principle in that. We won't go into all the philosophy of it, but I have this vision in my mind, like people try to hold on to something so tight, it comes right through their fingers, like squeezing jelly. Like some people want to hold on to everything and they don't realize why it's leaking. So one of the things that stops the leak sometimes is having a plan. That's 70% that's left after you've done that. And of course, out of that, you'd be paying taxes and other things. You can screw that up. You can waste it on stuff. You can buy too big a house. You could, God forbid you buy a new car, but you could do all of these different things with that money as long as you're doing the other and you don't go in debt.
Yeah.
So, and that will give you an opportunity to go into business for yourself. Or if you are in business for yourself, if you'll pay yourself instead of like so many of us, as you grow your company, you're the last one to get paid. And many times you're barely hanging in there. You're borrowing for Peter to pay Paul. You're going through that experience of just barely making it. And that's why it's tough. And so many people quit because they don't have that security.
Well, and I think going back towards that entrepreneur, that person wanting to start in financial services or another company, I mean, making those right choices to set yourself up to really engage and not have, some kind of, huge barrier that you've put in place by bad debt or some maybe bad financial decisions. Yeah. I think if you can stay clear of that stuff, you're certainly going to have a better runway. But I'm going to go back to one thing that you said that, it can't get lost, and that is comparison.
Yeah.
You can't, if you're starting off, you can't compare yourself against the person who's been doing this for 30 years.
Right.
I mean, there's just been too much history and learning and knowledge and a lot of structure that's happened. In comparison, I think, is a thief.
Yeah.
It will steal your joy. It will steal your encouragement. You can really fall apart under comparison.
Yeah.
The second thing that you had talked about was something I really wrestled with, which was this idea of contentment. Mm-hmm. So being content wherever you find yourself, and could it coexist with ambition?
Yeah.
I felt like, how could I be content and also have ambition? And I think a lot of people, especially when they're younger in career, that's a real wrestling match, right?
Yeah.
Because when you think about contentment, sometimes people will immediately associate that with laziness or just, doing kind of being mid-level or whatever, but that's not the case.
No. It's like timidity versus humility. It's not the same thing. Like it does get confusing. And I think part of that has to do with, confidence, and life is a confidence game. And I think sometimes what happens is people don't have confidence that they're on the right track in that. And by the way, there's all kinds of reasons that can occur. So, I think because of how we measure, that comparison of, we can always find somebody in some industry, in our own industry, who's doing better or seems to be getting all the acknowledgement and all that kind of stuff. And so, again, my belief is the enemy, so to speak, comes in and discourages you. And you want to be aware of the discouragement that comes our way. And then the way to overcome that is you just don't quit. I mean, that really, this is true in sports. This is true in business. It's true in marriage. It's true in, everything. Don't quit. I mean, you just grind it out.
Winners
sometimes.
Find a way.
Winners win. I mean,
winners win.
And so part of that is an attitude. And by the way, let's be honest. I just feel like we need to be authentic. Not everybody's cut out for that. Not everybody is cut out to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's cut out to have that level of competition. True. And if you're not, just admit it and, find unique skills. If I could add a third thing is, I want to give you a concept. This is true in my industry, where we constantly try to improve what it is that we're doing. And we have a focus in our particular practice on the retirement community, the pre-retirement, the guy selling a business, people going through life transitions like widowhood, singlehood, selling a business, inheriting, moving moving into retirement. All of these kind of things are one time, got to get ready. So a lot of our focus is on what are the tools and techniques and strategies and financial concepts that best help that group. So let me give you a difference. So the general practitioner, who are great folks, people who work in whatever field and they're a general practitioner, they can serve a massive amount of people, and they have skill sets that allow them to be very broad in what they offer. But then some people have a narrow niche in the marketplace. And so what they might be able to do...
Niches equal riches.
All right. So for example, my guess is the person, whether it's a medical procedure or, a mechanic or whatever, that understands that one thing better than anybody else, and they have constantly worked on their gift. So forgive the philosophical element of this. But again, one of my coaches said, if you have weaknesses, you're not alone, but if you worked on your weaknesses your entire life, you'll die with strong weaknesses. But
Still be a weakness.
It'll still be a weakness. But if you will focus and hone on, so this is whether you want to be an entrepreneur, whether you want to, be the best person at the company that you work for, whatever, what are the skill sets that you could pick up? What are the things that you could read, study on your own, even if you're not getting paid for it, that could make you an expert in a particular area that the public needs, wants, and desires? And career-wise, I always told people, if you want to have a real success in whatever entrepreneurial venture you have or within your company, find something that people have to do, they don't want to do, and they have to do. So if you could find something that fits those three, where people, they don't know how to do it and you do, they don't want to do it, and you do, and they have to do it. Maybe it's a regulatory thing or something like that, and you do. Like what's going to happen today, Nick, is my generation knew what it was like to live without the internet. We'll be the last generation. We'll be the last generation that knew what it was like not to have the internet.
Yeah.
And our children today, these young people that you were admiring and talking about how awesome, they're going to be the last generation that knew what it was like not to have AI. So,
Dad, I got to stop here, okay, because I think this is a perfect segue. You and I just got back from a continuing education conference. In our industry, based on all of our colleagues, I think we spend way more money and time on continuing our education, which allows for us to speak to certain things to clients that maybe a lot of firms can't, just because we spend the time getting the knowledge.
Well, Nick, one other thing. I know I'm interrupting you here, but a lot of really great people are in our industry, but the companies they work for won't let them go into those things. So there's no use them studying, going the extra mile.
Because they can't even talk about it.
Because they're unfortunately, they're boxed in by that. And that's not to say that they're not great people and really good advisors and, have a great heart for what it is that they do. There's just some of that is the freedom of being independent.
Sure. So we go to this conference. We're in Scottsdale, Arizona. And
117 degrees. Go ahead.
If Hades is hot, we found it. All right. Like, it was hot. It's a dry heat. No, I'm sorry. When you're in the 1 teens, that's just hot. So my mind was blown. We're learning about all kinds of AI. We're learning about how that's going to impact people's personal finances and taxes and all these
Health,
things.
Everything.
So, Randy, take us, like you kind of brought us up to speed with where we are today with this amazing team, very holistic. We're fiduciaries. We're doing these amazing things to service our clients. And we have an amazing, clientele base. So, Randy, we've talked about, where we were, and where we are even today with our amazing team. Like, we've got the best team ever. We spend so much time, effort, and energy on education, of ourselves so we can pour that into our clients. But, getting back from Scottsdale, Arizona at that incredible conference, okay, and we're learning about these things that are blowing my mind with technology and how to implement it and help clients. You're a student of the business. You're 41 years in. You pay attention and you are so well connected, okay? Paint a picture for our audience. 10 years from now, What does our industry look like? What does our firm look like? What does this next decade look like?
Right. So I think what a lot of people thought was the robo-advisor type of thing where, everything's done by, technology and all that was going to be a huge hit. And be honest with you, I thought it would be too, but it wasn't. So what we've recognized is the personal touch, the ability to take somebody's, the dynamics of their family, their finances, their health and wellness, and hone something that the Smith family is different than the Jones family, different than the Robertsons family. Like they all have that dynamic. I think there'll be more firms looking to go that way and probably more people leaving traditional industries to go into the independent field like we have done. So they're not all going to work for the big companies whose names we're not going to bring up to, because it's not a picking on anybody. But the culture within some organizations don't allow this kind of an adaptive format to work with people. I think we're going to see more movement in the industry towards independence, people forming their own firms, maybe
kind of not being slaves to the big bad boxes in our industry today.
Yeah, even some of the independent firms are still trapped by relationships that founders have made with certain companies that they can't get out of and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's one thing that's going to happen. I think the other thing is that smart firms are going to adapt more and more technology. And, one of the arguments that we have internally in the office is like, how much different technology do we have? And we want one thing that would solve all of it. What we realized is, a hammer's not a wrench, it's not a screwdriver, it's not a meter, so you've got to have some different tools. So I think there'll be more investment and maybe some consolidation of those tools. There is some, but it's still not ideal. So I think that the changes are going to be, some of it's going to be driven by technology, some of it's going to be driven by independence. Now, what could occur, and again, that's what I think would be optimal, is that would occur. But what could occur is a continued consolidation where big banks are buying other big banks and that there's less choices. And I think that is our risk that our industry faces, that big companies become even bigger, they gobble up small companies, and they don't maintain that independence. So the firms that can maintain...
Kind of one of two directions is what I'm hearing.
It is. I mean, I don't know for sure. I know that technology should be a part of either one of those, but really technology is only as good as the mechanic whose hands it's in. So the technician has to be trained and has to be... And what's happening today is, in my belief, is that be more and more movement for people becoming more educated themselves, going outside of the corporate wheelhouse and going and seeking the guidance and the tools and the technology that are available in the marketplace, but you got to pay for it yourself. They're not giving it to you. You've got to make an investment in your firm. And I think more and more people are going to move independent and they're going to start making that investment. And I think consolidation will continue on the other side.
Yeah. Now for us, kind of forward looking.
Yes.
10 years from now, we've built this amazing, really practice. We're serving clients, hopefully at a really, really high level. Hopefully our clients feel that way. What do you see for Yeomans, your retirement coach, 10 years from now?
Yeah, I think the continued growth, we've got a pretty good growth pattern going on right now and has been going on for a while. I think what we do is we continue.
And is it fair to say this is probably the best year we've ever had as a business?
It is. In both the culture, both the team members, both the assets under management, the new clientele. I mean, we've got a lot of wins this year.
Amazing.
And those things are all connected. And I think the future looks like that. But like our challenge is to continue to find good people, because again, that ceiling of complexity, you can only build what you've got right now with the structure. So we've got to continue to add to our technology, to add to our team. That means having the tools in place internally, including people tools, to be able to grow and manage people. And that makes our offering better. So, one of the things that we've done is consistently invested back into the business, and even in the things that we do to attract clients. Like, we want to work by referral only. We want, again, people so compelled that they feel so good about what they're getting and the experience is so different that they want to introduce us to like-minded people who, appreciate the kind of services that we do, need those kind of services and that. And I think that's how our business will continue to evolve. I don't see us, having ad campaigns and doing a lot of those kind of things. It just doesn't fit the style of business that we have.
Well, and, we've been on this journey of growth, and to be such a seasoned business, I mean, next year's a big year.
Yeah.
2025.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
Our firm will be 30 years old next year.
Right.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Right. But to be a seasoned business and to have the kind of growth that we're having, it's incredible because a lot of firms kind of start fading out after a period of time, and we really haven't seen that. Yeah. What would you attribute that to? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we're growing like wildfire.
I think one of them is a philosophy we have that we try to teach clients as well. And that is you retire from the stuff that you don't want to do and you're not any good at, and you do more of the things that you love and want to do. So my career has been a retirement career. People ask me every week, when are you retiring? And I'm not insulted by that. I know what they mean. But I've said I've been retiring for 15 to 20 years now. And so what I've done...
Retire now, retire often.
Right. I've retired from a lot of the things that I didn't enjoy in the business so I could spend more time and energy on the things that I love. So I think what happens is we believe in this idea of unique ability, talent, and skill. And so what we want to do is make sure that in all the things that we do, in all of those areas, we have skilled technicians, people who care, that work in that area and they lead it. It's not me running everything like it was in the beginning, and it's not me and just an assistant running everything. As we've grown, we've added people who are able to thrive in areas within this business model that we have that I don't like and you don't like. So bringing people so that you and I, as an example, as leaders, as people who are kind of leading the growth phase of the business, the things I'm doing are becoming less and less. But I'm using that same concept that we talked about perhaps for younger people, focusing on unique ability and skills. So I'm trying to get better and better at a narrower number of things, but our office still has a very broad offering. I'm just not doing a lot of those things right now.
Randy, if you were, and again, leaders are readers, we know this. We know the book You Don't Read Can't Help You. We know these things.
Yeah, listen to some of this stuff.
If we were to encourage people with, maybe the entrepreneurial mindset that are looking to really get on this path, and maybe start a business, or maybe it's a career changer today, and maybe it's a member of our audience that are listening, and maybe this applies to one of their children.
Yeah.
What's one or two books that you think would be most impactful if they were to get a hold of them? They might really, really help them have a different and a better kind of start to the business world.
Boy, that's a big ask, Nick. I have, I read a lot, and so many books have had an impact on me. So I really don't know how to answer that, like narrowing it down to two books. So sometimes I think the best thing to do is, what is your interest? So if you have an interest, who are the leaders in that industry? And what I might do is, if I had an interest in a particular field, I might do a little research to find out who is the leader in that, and do they have any books? Are there any YouTubes out there where you can watch and get a flavor for what they're doing?
Well, all right, I'm going to land on something here, Randy. Okay. One, for our audience, okay? We're going to include a link, or not a link, but we'll put in the show notes. Maybe we'll compile a list of books that we think will be really, really excellent reads if you are on this business owner entrepreneurial journey. I know you've been avoiding that word this whole episode. It's a tough word. But we'll put a link to some great books. But Randy, how about I reframe this?
Okay.
What are a couple of books that had the biggest impact on you?
Okay.
And what is maybe one of the most current reads you've had that you think's been really excellent?
Wow. Okay. So I remember 1991 reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders and or people, excuse me.
Yeah.
There's another one actually with that same name, but it says leaders, but it is People by Stephen Covey. And I don't know why. I think sometimes this expression is when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. So I read that book and it resonated with me so much that it was like, the veil was pulled back and I could see some things that were missing. And one of them in the world of communication and consulting is the 5th habit in that book, which I constantly refer to and remind us to do, which is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And so few people in the consulting business will pause enough to hear the real needs and concerns and worries of their client before they address it, because we've been doing it so long. And if you've done it for a long time, you've heard it all before. And so you can't wait to answer and solve their problem. That's not what they want. They want to be heard. So that really helped me understand how to communicate effectively and be of value to clients. Now, the whole book does with all 7 habits. So that was certainly one of the more impactful ones. And then if I go back to the early days, I think one of the books that was very impactful, although I don't refer to it as much, was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And
the E-Myth revised today, right?
Yeah. I like the old one better, but that's because I'm old. But really, the whole idea of the E-Myth is the entrepreneurial myth, and it has to do with the fact that people don't understand entrepreneurship. And so it's a great book to refer back to. And then you wanted to know maybe a more recent book?
Yeah. What's a recent book that's really, maybe had an impact on you?
Wow. So I just
and
finished.
For our audience, if you don't know this about Randy, I read a lot. Randy kicks my butt when it comes to reading. I mean, he always has 2 or 3 going. And so
I don't recommend that. and sometimes if you're a little slow, you have to read a lot of books. But I just a book that was referred to me, and often go places and find out what people are reading in that. But it's Malcolm Gladwell's more recent book, and it's revisiting the tipping point. That's not the exact name. It's like I think it's revisiting
picked it up
or
yet.
something like that. I just finished that, and it is really interesting dealing with how things change. He dealt with COVID. He deals with other decisions that are being made in the medical field, how drug abuse and all these kind of things have their tipping point, and culturally, et cetera. He's such a fascinating guy in terms of how he does his research and brings to the table. So that's a good read. For anybody to understand how things change. And sometimes when we look at society and we're wondering what happened and why are people doing this, that, and other thing, he's a good one.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Randy. I think this is, hopefully it's an encouraging episode to people that are thinking about going on a journey, understanding that there is a grind, there's a price to pay, understanding that there's hope, and, being, focused on your knowledge and education, making wise decisions with your finances so you're not digging yourself out of a hole as you're trying to grow. And then even in our own industry, I think there's so many people in our audience who are sometimes curious about our business and our line of work. You might be a client, or you might be somebody else's client, but like when you really pull back the curtain to understand that, it takes a team.
Yes.
It takes staying up on knowledge, and there's a lot of regulation.
Yeah.
But to be a one-man show is a really difficult thing in our world today.
I don't know why, but I'm going to tell you one other thing I think that everybody can use, whether you have the desire to go the entrepreneur route, starting your own business, anything like that. And that is, like we talked about business coaching, it's really a shame if you build an unbelievably successful firm and you don't take care of your health. And so one other thing I would say is if you wanted another feather in your cap or another arrow in your quiver, something that would add value to your life, that would be impactful in the business and your personal life, is get in shape and do that. If you don't know how to do it, and most people don't, get a coach, get at least for, a couple of months or so, hire a trainer, learn how to exercise properly, learn about nutrition, take care of the body. That's your only vehicle So if you do that, your energy can be level higher, and to be able to do some of the things. I did this when I was young, and I did burn the candle at both ends, but I still had that young man energy. So if you're a little bit later in life and you're doing this, you better take care of yourself, and you better get your energy up. And one of the best ways to do that is to make sure that your body is in its best shape it can be.
I love that, Randy, because, I wish I would have heeded that advice earlier in my life. I know you did. You told me a lot of things. But, you framed this. I don't know if you stole this from somebody or where this came from, but you said, hey, if I gave you X amount of money and you could go buy any car you wanted, right? Could be a Corvette, it could be a Mercedes, it could be a Toyota, it could be any car, but here's the key. Whatever car you pick, it's the only car you'll have for your entire life.
Right.
How would you service it? How would you maintain it? How would you take care of it? Right. How would you park it? How would you steward that car if it was the only one you ever had? And man, that was real talk. That was so good because, when we think about our body, you've got this one body.
Right.
What are you doing to take care of it?
Right.
So anyway,
that was free. That was the end of the episode, and that was free. And Aaron, I just want to let you know we had a good time, but we miss you, buddy.
Miss you. Thanks for tuning in. This has been, I know, a little different episode of Coffee with Your Retirement Coach, but we wanted to pull back the curtain today, have a real honest conversation, and we so appreciate you listening. So with that said, stay coachable.
We hope you enjoyed today's show, but you may have questions for our coaches, and they can be emailed at connect@yourretirementcoach.com. If you know someone that needs to hear this episode, we encourage you to share it. As a reminder, the content of this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as advice. On behalf of our coaches, we want to thank you for listening and for being coachable.
Yeomans Consulting Group, a registered investment advisor YouTube channel based in Marietta, Georgia. We strive to provide comprehensive wealth management services for every stage of the journey. This platform is solely for informational purposes and is not offering advisory services or sales of securities. Investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Comments by viewers or recognitions are no guarantee of future investment outcomes and do not ensure that a viewer will experience a higher level of performance or results. Public comments posted on this site are not selected, amended, deleted, or sorted in any way. If applicable, certain editing of personal, identifiable information and misinformation may be deleted. The opinions expressed herein are as of the date of publication and are subject to revision due to changes in the market or economic conditions and may not necessarily come to pass.